Hi everybody, my name's Quinn and today we're going to learn about marine debris. So what is marine debris? Well, marine debris is any kind of trash or litter or waste that gets into our oceans, our marine environment. So marine debris can take a lot of different forms, but there's some that you might be more familiar with. You've probably been walking down the road at some point and spotted a to-go coffee cup, or maybe a pop can. Those are both kinds of litter that can end up in the ocean. If someone throws it out of their car or leaves it on the beach, eventually the wind and the waves could take that out to sea. And marine debris can be really harmful to the ecosystems and to the different animals that live there. Animals that come to your province, like the leatherback sea turtle, the North Atlantic right whale, the salmon and the char, the fish that we depend on. So it's really important for us to learn about marine debris and learn what we can do to prevent it from going into the ocean. Now, marine debris can affect our animal friends in a few different ways. The two main ways that animals can be harmed by marine debris are called ingestion and entanglement. So ingestion is when an animal is eating this marine debris. It's eating litter, usually by accident. Now, some animals can see a bright and colorful piece of plastic and they might think that's food. Things like plastic bags can be very harmful because if it's floating in the water, it might be mistaken for food by different animals like turtles. We've seen the same thing happen with many other sea creatures. They're eating this trash and it's making them very sick. Another big problem for animals is entanglement. So entanglement happens when these animals are swimming into maybe old nets, old fishing line, or even garbage that's been left out in the ocean. A lot of entanglements happen because of ghost nets or ghost gear. And that's essentially any kind of fishing gear that's made it out into the environment, whether because someone threw it away there, or maybe it was lost by accident or forgotten out at sea. Fishing nets and fishing line are a really common piece of marine debris that you might have seen out on the beaches. And these were made to be durable. They were made to be really tough so that they won't break when you catch a fish. But that's a big problem when they're out in the ocean because that means that if an animal gets tangled, it's not going to be able to get away. Now, one really dangerous type of litter that we see all the time is plastic. It makes up 3/4 of all marine debris. In fact, scientists think that around 8 million metric tons of plastic enter the ocean every year. That's about the same as one garbage truck full of plastic being dumped into the ocean every minute. Much of this debris can come from single-use plastics, which are plastics you only use once and then throw away, like a straw or a chip bag or a water bottle. A pretty scary fact is that almost 80% of the plastic that's ever been made is still around in the environment today. 80%. It hasn't been recycled, it hasn't been burned, it's here with us in our oceans, in our rivers and lakes. And this is a huge problem. There is so much plastic in our oceans now, there actually might be more plastic than fish in the sea by 2050. And that's pretty scary, right? But what makes plastic so bad for the ocean? Now, plastic is particularly dangerous for the environment because it takes a really long time to break down. Now, what do I mean when I say break down? Another word for it is degrade. So something like a banana peel, you might be able to put into your compost. Things that grow from the earth can generally be composted and then they're able to be turned back into soil and you can use them in your garden. This is a really good way of getting rid of household waste. But some things can't be put in the compost. And a lot of these are what we call inorganic or synthetic. Plastic is synthetic, which essentially means that humans made it. It didn't come from nature. And this is actually pretty bad for the environment because this plastic can't break down in the same way that an organic thing like a banana peel can. So this plastic can be taken out into sea, it can be tumbled by the waves, the sun gets on it, and different processes break it down into smaller pieces. But actually this plastic will never be gone all the way. It turns into what we call microplastics, which are tiny pieces of plastic, less than 5 millimeters. That's pretty small. Sometimes you even need a microscope to see them. Now, microplastics are so bad because they're so hard to clean up. Imagine playing with glitter in your room and you accidentally spill the glitter. And it's really hard to clean it all up, right? It's so hard to get every single piece of glitter out of your carpet, and it's the same thing with microplastics. When they're so tiny, it's really hard to clean them out of the ocean. These microplastics can come from many sources, shed as microfibers from clothing, microbeads from things like face wash or cosmetics, and larger pieces of litter that have broken down. These plastics can't be cleaned up or caught by most filters and float freely in the ocean, polluting our waters. This is especially bad because many of the animals living in the ocean might eat the microplastics and become exposed to the harmful chemicals that many plastics contain. These microplastics and chemicals can cause something called biomagnification. Let's take a look at what this means. When a small animal, like a zooplankton, eats a piece of plastic, a microplastic, something huge like a whale could eat a ton of these zooplankton. And now that whale has all of those little microplastics inside of it. And that whale has accumulated all of the different chemicals and all the different microplastics that have been eaten by these tiny zooplankton. They're now in the whale, and that can make the whale really sick. So not only does our wildlife have to be wary of entanglement and other large debris, but they are also in danger from eating and swimming around in microplastics. And sometimes the fish that eat the plastic are eaten by bigger fish, and those bigger fish are eaten by us. So we want to make sure that that plastic isn't going into the ocean, because we don't want to be eating the plastic, and we don't want the animals to be eating it either. Sometimes it can seem like there's way too much garbage for us to ever do anything about. So much litter. But there's always something we can do about it. We want to try to reduce how much trash we produce in the first place. When it's safe, you could use a reusable mug instead of getting a to-go coffee cup. Instead of using a plastic water bottle, try to use a reusable one and fill it up at a tap or a water fountain. And that's going to help you reduce how much litter you produce. We have to be very careful about where our trash goes. If you're out on the beach eating chips, make sure that that wrapper makes it into the garbage and doesn't blow away in the wind. Everything that we bring out into nature, we want to make sure we pack it back in with us. Make sure you're recycling glass bottles. See if your town or your store has a program where you can return the glass bottles, sometimes even for a little bit of money. Make sure you're recycling cardboard and paper. Most metals can be recycled pretty easily, much easier than plastic. So we always want to make sure that we're recycling our metal objects. And if you're using things now like personal protective equipment, maybe gloves or face masks, we want to make sure that these don't become part of the problem either. Make sure that you're disposing of your gloves and your masks in the proper fashion. Don't let them become more marine debris. We have to make sure that we're very careful with where our fishing gear ends up and make sure it's not in the ocean where it could harm animals. Now, one common kind of fishing gear that you might see out on your beaches and in the oceans are what we call bait box liners. And you might have seen a blue plastic bag floating around or even on the shoreline, and that's a bait box liner. We've been really lucky here on Newfoundland that our harvesters have been really good about bringing these bait box liners back to shore and putting them into collection boxes. This has been so helpful for keeping these bait box liners out of the ocean and keeping the animals safe from them. If we want to reduce things like microfibers, like microbeads, we want to buy products that aren't going to harm the environment. Maybe you decide to join a beach cleanup or organize a group of people to go and clean up litter that's been left at the beach. That can be a really big help. Every single piece of marine debris and litter that you pick up is one less piece of trash that an animal might eat or get tangled in. So everything you do is a big help. We want you to be part of the solution and part of this effort to reduce marine debris and keep litter out of the oceans. Maybe you'll be the person who figures out the solution to microplastics and how we can recycle our plastic better so that it doesn't end up in the ocean. Maybe you'll be the person who comes up with the solution to ghost nets. How can we get them out of our ocean and make them stop tangling up our animals? You can also tell your friends and family what you learned today. Tell them how they can solve the problem of marine debris. And if you've ever recycled or you've ever reused something, You're already part of the solution. You're already helping us have a cleaner planet. Thank you so much for helping out our environment and making sure that your litter and your trash doesn't end up in the ocean. Now let's see if you can guess how long these different types of marine debris take to break down. So how long do you think something like a glass bottle takes to break down? So this actually takes over 1,000 years to break down. We don't actually know how long it takes exactly. We know it's more than 1,000, but no one's been around long enough to tell us how long does glass take to break down. How long do we think a plastic water bottle takes to break down? This bottle can take 450 years to break down. And remember, even when it turns into tiny pieces, it's never really gone. It's just microplastics. How long do you think a plastic bag takes to break down? So this bag can take about 20 years to break down into smaller pieces. But remember, it can turn into microplastics. How long do you think cardboard takes to break down? So cardboard and other types of paper products can take about 2 months to break down because they're made of more natural materials, so they actually don't take too long. How long do you think fishing line and nets take to break down? This can take up to 600 years to break down. Remember, fishing lines and nets are made of really strong materials, sometimes even plastic and nylon. So this will be around in the environment for 600 years. This could be tangling up animals for 600 years, long after we are gone. How long do you think a tin can takes to break down? So a tin can take about 50 years to break down. Sometimes these cans are able to rust, and that helps them break down a little bit faster. How long do you think an aluminum can takes to break down? So aluminum cans can take up to 200 years to break down, which is a really long time. So we want to make sure that we're recycling these so that this material can be reused instead of sitting around in the environment. Thank you so much for helping out our environment and making sure that your litter and your trash doesn't end up in the ocean. That's all for today, everybody. Thank you so much for learning about marine debris with me, and I'll see you next time.